Hello.
Good evening, Alan. How are you?
Okay, listen, thank you so much for the package. I appreciate it.
Okay, I'm sorry if I went above and beyond. I do apologize.
No. Really, that was wonderful.
Well, good. I'm glad you liked it.
No, really. I hate to say it, but I'm a little handicapped, so I appreciate the extra.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment.
Do I understand correctly? We're not going to have Andy on the meeting?
No, I got an email from him saying that he would not be joining us this evening.
All right. Do you know if we have any guests expected?
We are supposed to have Tom Ryder on for number one of the well regulation updates.
All right.
Other than that, Tom's the only guest.
Very good. Thank you.
And we're just waiting on Tom to come back in.
No sweat. No, you feel free to put anything I need in my mailbox anytime.
Right.
I'm sure my mail delivery person will get a kick out of it after a while. She's got a great sense of humor. We're very fortunate to have her.
Yeah,
she does a great job for us.
I see Tom's back on.
Cool.
Tom, you there? Hello, Tom. Now, let's give him another minute before we begin.
Sure thing. I got a message. He's trying to log on.
Okay. And I just got a message from Tom Ryder.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it would.
Oh, yeah, that was Tom Ryder trying to log on.
Okay.
Hey, Jack, Tom's on the call.
Oh, Tom's on the call? And there you are. Okay, good.
I had some issues with the meeting invite, though.
Oh, you did?
So, yeah, the audio part wasn't functioning, so I had to call in as a regular phone user.
Oh.
For some reason.
All right, we're just
waiting
on
Tom. I like being a regular.
Did you say irregular or regular?
No, I definitely prefer not to be irregular. Makes me grumpy.
Just waiting on Tom Ryder. I see Tom has arrived. Tom, you there?
I am. It took me like 3 times. For some reason, it kept on, it didn't give me access to the actual meeting.
I'm sorry about
Gave me
that.
I don't know why. It was bumping me to my Teams folder for some reason. But
All right. All right, well, the time is now 7:05. Before we begin, I do have an introduction to the remote meeting. This open meeting of the Mendon Board of Health is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's updated guidance on holding meetings pursuant to the act extending certain COVID-19 measures that was signed into law on June 16th, 2021. This act includes an extension until July 15th, 2022 of the remote meeting provisions of his March 12th, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Mendon Board of Health is convening by video telephone conference as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. This meeting will feature public comment. With that being said, I hand it over to the Vice Chairman of the board.
Thank you very much, Jack. The first item on the agenda is to discuss the well regulations. Tom Ryder, you're up.
so the well regulations, the updates. Has anybody seen the most recent updates? I'm not sure what date you guys have. I think we've had this on and off the agenda for a little while.
Yes, I've reviewed them. I couldn't tell you what the date on it is, but I received a very nice package delivered to my house that seemed to be very complete with all of your adjustments.
Okay. Bear with me. For some reason, my computer's now doing weird things. It's okay. Got it. Okay. So, how do you want to proceed with this? Do you want to go over section by section? Is there a location where you guys want to add more information or want me to provide more information on? I think the purpose was to clean up some of the definitions and look into sampling requirements and define what basically a semi-public water supply is versus a private well.
Yeah, I
think
have to
last time
say,
Alan, go ahead.
oh no, I was hoping that Tom Ryder would continue.
Okay. So requirements for private wells, section 3.0. Did you guys have any comments on that? I can go over it. We changed the wording around. permit requirements. It just gave a better definition of when a permit is required. Semi-public wells, I think we changed it to define wells serving more than one dwelling, but under the definition of a public water supply. And and we have more definitions of distance offsets. So I'm not sure if I completed all the information you guys wanted on there. I did follow up with DEP regards to PFAS sampling. And their opinion is to hold off on putting a requirement for PFAS until they'll put some more guidance out by the end of the summer. PFAS, has been widely discussed. Most recently in public water supplies, the threshold is at 20 parts per trillion to take action for a public water supply. I think not putting this in the regulations, but maybe we can at least chart out for the public's knowledge, where, if we have any information on PFAS hits in the area, maybe to chart out the locations. But that wouldn't be in for the regulations. So that was, sorry, that was section 5 that I was just discussing. Who else is on this, on the meeting here for the board? Is it?
We have Tom and Alan.
Andy?
Andy is not on tonight.
Oh, okay. All right. Did Tom have any questions as well, or so far?
Tom Fickner, any questions on the well regulation so far?
Can you hear me okay?
Here we go. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, for some reason, it keeps automatically muting me. It's weird. It must know me. It must know me too well, this telephone. So to your term that you used, Tom, first of all, regarding 3.0 in general as a section and the suggested revisions, I'm fine with what you're looking to modify. I don't have any concerns there on that section. But with regard to the term or the incorporation of semi-public wells, so something like this would apply to the development that's being proposed up on Route 16. I take it that's going to be a combination commercial residential development.
I don't know. That probably could already be a public water supply. Is there more than have they applied for?
So you're thinking that development, the entire development, both commercial and residential aspects, would fall under public water supply being guided by the state then?
I think it may already.
Okay.
I can check into that.
I wasn't sure how that was gonna go. The reason I ask is just knowing that something like that is coming, and for anything future that may come, You know, are we covering the right, with the proposed changes in these regulations, are we covering all our bases for those types of, you know, developments that are forthcoming, you know? But if they're already
Yeah,
gonna be guided by public water supply, that kind of takes us as locals out of the loop anyway. There's already guidelines in place for the state, that would have to be followed.
yeah, I think this is more to, you know, have some control over, you know, anything more than a, you know, duplex or more of, you know, where the wells can go, how many wells to sink for a lot. Is already, you know, the well already needs to be on the lot that it serves. I mean, that's already a legal requirement. I think this is more the case of like, you know, making sure that the property owners have control over their well. That serves
Right.
serves a
And-
facility.
Yeah, and what I had been thinking in the back of my mind was with just using that development as an example, if it were somehow determined that it would not be considered a public water supply and might be termed semi-public, how would that manifest itself in terms of, you know, validating for all the units that would be built, how they would handle that, you know, that the use of the water, you know, and the guidelines for that, you know, because they'd basically be sharing a common source. But how would that be regulated? But I guess maybe that's still a question that we'd probably have to ask of the state then, if this is indeed, if that particular site has been deemed a public water supply.
Yeah. Right. I think this is more to make sure that the you know, duplexes, you know, townhouses can have control over the, not intended for a transient or non-transient, not community wells. You know, for I think we were looking at a previous development where the wellhead was shared between two units, and should they be individual? I don't think anything is prohibited anything yet. I think it falls still within a private well. It just kind of separates it right now as a definition. What's the difference between a private well and semi-public? I think, you know, that I think that needs to be, you know, determined a little bit closer. I'm seeing what other towns have done. Saying that I have, you know, Ashland has definitions of semi-public. Any water system serving intended service that is not included as a private well or included in with the Department of Environmental Protection as a drinking water supply for public water, you know, for public water supply. They just separated it out. Probably for, you know, future exploration of how to handle them.
So to date, just out of curiosity, what has been our involvement in the field so far with regard to that proposed development up on Route 16? I know we did some initial field, some site visits, or at least one, if not a couple.
Yeah, we did some soil testing. And do you happen to have the address?
I do not know what the address is they'd be using. Jack, I don't know if you have that handy, whether it's referenced on those plans that are on the counter there, if they're still there in the office.
That I would not know. I'm here at the home office, so I would not have access to those right now.
Oh, gotcha. No, no worries. Yeah, I'm not sure of the actual address they're using for that.
All
Well,
right,
no matter. I just didn't know if that development might be considered something that would fall under semi-public or not. That's all. I just wanted to make
Yeah, well-
sure that we were covering bases with regard to that term. I just used that development as an example, but you raise other examples, like, for example, a duplex, you know, a single building that's divided as a duplex, and you have two sides sharing the same one well. That's probably more the straightforward definition that you were kind of alluding to, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep, okay.
Would have it been, let's see, it's on, you said it's Route 16. Does it connect with,
Tom, it would
Hartford Avenue?
most likely have an address, some particular number, Uxbridge Road,
Okay,
and or Washington Street.
yeah, I was just checking out Washington Street. Trying to see what I got here for Washington Street. Recent. Uxbridge does sound familiar. I think we did the soil testing last summer.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I am not sure where it stands right now. I'm looking at, I'm going through them right now, so.
Okay, well, just using, you know, aside from that, what's upcoming, just using the basic reference you would use with regard to a, you know, a duplex type of arrangement that would be on essentially a residential property where two separate owners are going to share a building and share a well.
Yeah, I think we
Do
need
we
to
have
explore
enough-
that a little bit. Say again?
Well, I was going to ask, do we have enough of a guideline with what we're proposing here to cover that basic situation with regard to, you know, usage and quality, covering of quality, ownership responsibility, things of that nature?
I think that needs to be looked into. You know, perhaps some more guidance on, you know, semi-public wells on, you know, who's going to take responsibility. I think what is written in here right now is that if they're prohibited unless they can be shown to be a necessity, it would be manifestly unjust. So, but that's only the reference it is. You know, it's not. It's prohibited unless you can show that you have proper management to test the well, to, you know, make sure it's safe.
So you're saying the existence of a semi-public would be prohibited, barring coverage of those points you just mentioned? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So pretty much show that you need to serve more than, you know, from what I was hearing is that the board wanted to say, each, and reflect back on this, on each unit should have their own well. It should be, they should have their own well. And, so perhaps, duplex will have, one side of the yard have a well and then the other side have another well. That might restrict, or have two wells like near each other, but two separate lines going into the units.
Is that
That was-
is that more practical than, you're kind of, then are you kind of assuming that you're gonna be tapping two separate sources? Or could they be two separate lines from the same source? I mean, it seems a little
Tom, if I may,
convoluted there. Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
Go ahead.
I think at the time we were trying to make sure that someone who were to buy duplex or into a triplex, maybe even a fourplex, that they would have control of very important and precious water source. Sometimes, unfortunately, I know I've seen in the past, someone who owns a duplex, one side wants to paint, the other side doesn't. One side wants to re-roof, the other side doesn't. Well, if the roof is leaking, you can drag that on a little while. If you don't like the color of the house, well, you can drag that decision on for a while. If the well pump goes or the water filter isn't filtering out the things that you need to correct to have good water, one side wants to and one side doesn't, you're in a jam. So I thought that our initial scope was to make sure that someone who lived in a duplex or larger unit, triplex, quadplex, would have control of their well, so that if their well needed something or they wanted to do something with their well, they would be able to do it without having to worry about someone else who was being serviced by that well want to do. Because water is such a precious resource. The way we were set up before, someone who built a duplex only had to put one well in to serve that structure. So we were trying to fill the gap between someone who owned a single private home and maybe a building that was being served by a public water supply, which is covered on the state level. So we were trying to fill that in between, because obviously we can see with the building situation, the housing shortage, etc. We may see more of these family buildings going up in town. So I thought that, try to cover target. I don't recall where the threshold is for the number of people being served, etc., where you fall into that water supply category. Perhaps Tom Ryder can enlighten me and help me remember what that threshold is. Back to you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Yes, 26. Yes, 26, 7/26, and there's something about a 60-day period where you have a similar staff of 26 employees for public water supply.
Okay, so based on that, I think you've filled that gap for us.
Yeah, so that's how I remember reading into it as well. I was trying to make sure that I draw the same line where, it was supposed to be prohibited unless it's like manifestly unjust. So the idea is not to squash anything, but make sure you show that it's got to meet the same environmental health protections. So like if there's like an association that is funded for capital and operation of a well, and it doesn't meet the public water supply, they should show that they have a source to make sure that it can get tested, water can get treated. That would be an example of making something, turning something into like this can be overturned by a health benefit, like a protection of the health. I think that's what we're kind of looking at.
Tom Fickner,
Well, I would
comments?
I would agree with your description, Alan. That's exactly what we're looking to do with semi-public. I just wonder if, though, we're not addressing the full needs here, though, with what's being proposed. Unless we're saying we're leaving it up to the occupants of the households in question to, quote unquote, fight it out.
Well, I don't think so, because based on what Tom Ryder just said about the number 26, what I'm hearing about that proposed development, that's more than 26 people.
I'm not referring to the
Area
development
or
now.
whatever? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not referring. Yeah, I'm not. I'm going back to the basic description that Tom used with regard to a duplex.
Right. If that's what we would call a semi-public. If they start to, say every 2 units will share a well to get under the public water supply. So they call it a semi-public water supply. They need similar protections.
So with the wording here that's being proposed, though, we're kind of saying that semi-public we're prohibiting it unless they can show unless it can be shown that not permitting would be manifestly unjust. But I already kind of would foresee potential issues. I mean, we have some now in town, and I don't know how the folks handle that. Is that just an internal matter between the owners of the two sides? They're just kind of working that out. Is it something that we as a board should not necessarily be needing to be worried about being involved with, or?
So the existing.
It's my understanding that this is going forward.
Yes.
Not going backward.
Oh, understood. So I'm just kind of trying to understand. So what's happening now? Do we have an idea what happens now with these certain properties? We do have properties that exist like this in town.
Right. Well, they
So
must have to work. Yeah, they must have to work it out amongst themselves. If all of a sudden their well starts putting out water full of iron, we have to work it out as to, are we going to put a filter on it? It's very possible. I haven't been in a duplex that has a well that's set up that way, but maybe if one side decided to do a filter and the other side said no, then on the supply line where it wires to each unit, one person would put a filter on it and the other person wouldn't. If the well pump goes, obviously they have to get together, because with a bad well pump, either unit gets water. So I would assume there has to be some level of cooperation. Some, families that live in a dwelling that already exists that one well services both sides. I'm also sure that if for some reason you can't get along with your neighbor, there's nothing that says you can't come to the Board of Health and pull a permit and drill your own well.
Well, then you potentially run into, we have a lot of non-conforming lots in the town. You potentially run into distance limitations and things of that nature. And seems like we still have some questions in this area, from my perspective, anyway.
Yeah, I do too. I would like to explore it a little bit more on at least matching it up a little bit of what, a public water supply is. And I mean, not, public water supplies are, the thresholds are pretty intense, not to make it intense, but make it to have an ability that there is a source of funding out there, if the owners can't get together, they have a management company that is in charge of treating and making sure the pumps are operating. And maybe it's not that easy. Maybe something has to go into some sort of association prior to approvals.
So this would be similar to like a development that shares a septic system?
Yeah, exactly. There was a development where they used a common area. There's a few developments that use common areas for the septic system. They show that they can put a septic system on the lots, and then they did a flexible subdivision, and then and they were allowed to use another area. But now this area is not near any of the units' houses, so they don't know if there's a failure going on. So they were required to have somebody operate the system like a condominium. There's like association involved. So similar to that, where you have somebody who has knowledge of, our requirements right now is like you need to you need to sample your well 3 years prior to the sale. In reality, I think our guidance should be that you should sample at least every year for bacteria. Perhaps that's what should be done for a semi-public water supply. Make sure that at least people know they're not drinking coliform bacteria, and do a basic scan.
Tom Fickner, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't want to say we're necessarily comparing apples and oranges when we're talking about an actual development versus a duplex. I think they are different in nature. A development would have, like you talked about, a quote unquote association element to it, whereas I don't know if somebody building a duplex, if that falls under the same criteria as a quote unquote development. Unfortunately, I don't have any background in that, so I couldn't say for sure. I just, my concern would be whether or not we needed to define something from our end that made it pretty clear and pretty cut and dry for those who do take occupancy or ownership in a duplex type of building, that the guidelines are pretty clear in terms of those that want to build one. Even the guidelines are pretty clear as to what has to be put in for the base infrastructure from a septic and well perspective. To kind of take away the assumptions that the neighbors are going to act reasonably and responsibly toward taking on any needs. You know, I mean, I don't want to overcomplicate it with a regulation or a guideline from a board perspective, but I just, you know, I still kind of have questions about this semi-public aspect anyway. I don't know if we're clearly providing the guidance that we should or should not, to be honest with you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I'm writing this down so I can take a note. I mean, summarize is like you want to make sure that we're clearly providing guidance in this section.
Yeah, I just think it you know, it can leave a lot to be left, you know, for potential, like I said, buildings that come along that are looking to do this. You know, for the housing shortage is an issue, and to Alan's point, we could be seeing more of this coming up, and just having kind of a clear-cut definition for the builders that want to come in and do these types of units. If anything, I would think it would help the potential buyers of such units, as opposed to kind of having a finger pointing type of an incident that could come up down the road if issues were to come up, you know.
Tom Ryder, would something like this be similar to like when we've had a deed restriction put on for, like, you know, a number of bedrooms, so that someone can't be misled as to how many bedrooms a structure they're going to purchase is supposed to be? Would something like this be similar, Tom Ryder?
We could perhaps draft something as part of the well regs, you know, subject to, you know, have the unit subject to an operation maintenance plan that was submitted on file at the Board of Health office or herewith recorded, and make it a simple, like, 1-page, you know, document. So any buyer would have knowledge that they are purchasing purchasing a unit that should be under a maintenance, and very similar have you know, sometimes you know, for such as tight tanks, we have that the whoever is proposing on doing the maintenance, they submit, you know, their agreement that they have agreed to enter into a 2-year contract to manage the tight tank, and they're supposed to re-up it. You know, re-up it every 2 years, or inform us when they get fired, if they do, you know.
Yeah, no, Tom Fichter, what are your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, something like that could address the issue.
Jack, any comments?
We do have a Tisha Lowe who has her hand raised.
Hi,
Go ahead, Tisha.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I just wanted to add something that I think the direction you're going makes a lot of sense. I'm a real estate agent in town, and to have it written up so that we all know what we're marketing, you know, and what we're selling and listing or selling, that it's clear, you know, because what if a buyer comes in and there's a problem with the well water, but there's nothing in writing between the other existing seller of the duplex? It just turns into a mess. So some kind of, you know, structure put in place for someone who's going to build these types of duplexes or anything like that. It just makes a lot of sense that there's, you know, some structure. That's all.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
Tisha.
you.
It's a very good point. Yeah, it's great to have somebody on who's looking at it from that perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, otherwise it turns into a nightmare, sales fall apart at the last minute. It's just makes no sense to not have any structure for the builders who are doing it, and for the people who are buying them and selling them. So thank you for letting me
Tish,
talk.
do you have any experience with something in town or close to Mendon where it was a duplex situation with one well? Have you heard of any problems or issues from owners that are selling or people that have bought into a situation like that already exists?
Not personally, but I can ask, my brokers, if they know of anything, but I do know of, like, from personal experience, when I'm taking a buyer to a duplex that has no language, and you look at the roof and you have to say, well, there is no language because it's one of the older ones, and there's no language. So basically it's something that the builder um, has to spend money up front at this point, creating documents, hiring an attorney. And my understanding, it costs somewhere about, I shouldn't quote someone's price, but I was told about $10,000 to create the type of document that helps with this from an attorney, where everything is specified. Because otherwise I'm telling a buyer, yep, it looks like an older roof, and unless you want to go knock on the neighbor's door and talk and see what kind of person they are and if they have any kind of money to put towards a new roof, it's just a mess. So that's with a roof, a well is just so similar. But I can ask around and get back to you. If anyone in the office has experience, absolutely.
Thank you very much. We'd appreciate that because at this time, I don't think we were going to address structures in town that already exist. But if we hear of any nightmares, we may find, even though it's a civil issue, I've been informed, we may find that we may need to address units that already exist for when they transfer to a new owner. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. That was a great resource that I didn't know was was available to us tonight. Thank you.
Great. And I'll just reach out once I, talk to someone who has some information to share about past experience with wells. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Trish. The other thing that we've heard concerns about, and it's really not under the Board of Health to decide who, but some comments have come back about so and so is responsible to pay for the well, not me, and so they pointing at each other. That's something that kind of needs to be spelled out a little bit more without the Board of Health, forcing a one party or the other to be the one to pay. It's supposed to be done prior to, sampling the well is supposed to be done prior to the transfer of the property.
Well,
who does it?
Well, most banks, someone who's getting a mortgage, the bank requires it. But to my knowledge, I don't believe, a Title V requires it if it's within 100 feet, but otherwise, I'm not sure it is required. If it's a cash buyer and they're not using a bank and it's not within 100 feet of the well, then it's up to the buyer at their own discretion if they want to test it. And I'm not sure
Right,
the bank.
So Mendon has requirements already that it's to be tested.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So, and that's going to be, there's probably going to be more education coming out in the near future regarding making sure that that when someone does a Title V inspection, regardless where the well is, that they also, and it doesn't have to be the inspector, but they have knowledge that the well should be tested at the same time, perhaps, or maybe it's already been tested. And it's not going to be the Title V inspector's responsibility. It's going to be it's got to be the person who is transferring the property. Whether he makes an agreement with the new buyer to do the testing, that doesn't matter. It just needs to be submitted to the Board of Health prior to the transfer.
This is Jack. In regards to that aspect, I was looking around Blackstone Valley towns, and the town of Uxbridge does put into their regulations that the owner is responsible to get tested. So they do list the owner as being responsible. And also the town of Hopkinton, they also put it in their regulations for the wells that the owner selling the property before transfer is also responsible for the well to be tested. So I didn't know if Mendon wanted to go that route and specifically state that the owner is responsible or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know what Jack and I have conversed on the subject a couple of times, and just for Tricia's information and those listening, so the private well regulations that we're working on now, Tricia, they actually originally went into effect back on May 6th in 1997. So what we're doing now is we're basically looking to incorporate some amendments to those basic private well regulations that have been in place for quite some time. One of my questions, since we kind of touched on it, was what about wells that existed prior to 1997? Because the way I'm kind of looking at this set of regulations is that we're talking about any well that would have been put into place from 1997 forward. Would I be correct in making that statement?
Well, if there's a transfer of property, they're supposed to have it sampled. So it's maybe just having a little education, some sort of web or in mailing, to the Title V inspectors and the realtors in the area, and just make sure that people have knowledge that this is the requirement that is tested for at least. I think we're going beyond Section 3 now, but it is. I think it's an education. I think this is an opportunity to have some education. And if there is a contamination problem, when you pointed out the Hopkinton, it's kind of funny because I wrote those regulations back about 15, almost 20 years ago, and I think it subsequently got updated to have the owner pay for it because maybe I left it too vague, and people were trying to figure out, well, who owns the payment. I didn't want to say that. So maybe they decided that, hey, it's got to be the current owner because it's too much chaos going on, I guess. So lessons learned, if that's the best way to do it.
So to your point, Tom, about the the transfer of property, that you're kind of making reference to what is required under Title V with that?
Yeah, because we don't have sewer in town, so every transfer of property is going to require, an inspection. So we might as well know at the time. While you're doing it, you might tell the homeowner that, hey, the Board of Health is going to expect a well test at the same time. Do you want to do it now, or do you already do it? That's the opportunity. It's a warm and fuzzy type of discussion.
Right. Well, I'm just wondering, we know it's referenced in the Title V aspect with regard to, the transfer and what's required, but have we actually built that into the private well regulation aspect of what we're talking about?
It's in section
because one of the things I had in reading through it is, I got the sense that, it would be governing wells that would have been put in and developed with regard to, as of 1997. And I just, what about something that is older than that? Are these regulations designed to be an end-all be-all, or are we?
Yes, this
Go
is
ahead.
for all wells, all private wells, whether it's a dug well, an artesian well. I don't think it includes public water supplies because they're already adequately regulated.
Well, yeah, we
So-
wouldn't want to include public water supply in a private well regulation anyway, I
Right.
wouldn't think. So what
Right,
you're
so-
saying is that any well that was done, irrespective of when it was done, if it was done 50 years ago, these regulations supersede or would include that property?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So under definitions of a private well. Right, so I don't think they can claim, well, it was drilled before 1997, therefore I don't have to do a water sample. Well, it's triggered, now you're selling the property. I don't think the Board of Health, I would not advise the Board of Health to go back and say you must do pump tests and sample for every constituent that we have for new construction. I think it's best bet to make sure that we, when have something triggered when the transfer of property occurs, such as you must show that you're drinking safe water, or the next person to drink safe water. Provide us the information that you sampled. And we have that in section 5.58 already, I believe.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, all right, so if that's the case, and I am fine with that, and I would agree that the transfer of the property should become the point of demarcation, if you will, for triggering the implementation of it. Yeah, we wouldn't want to consider going back and trying to go out for older properties. I would agree the transfer of property would be the mechanism to use. So, but we are saying that any well, regardless of when it was built, then now would come under conforming to these regulations.
Right.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, when Hopkinton adopted this, the education came out slowly but surely, and eventually, everybody, the compliance was, everyone self-complied pretty much with it, because they found that there was interest in selling the property, which people knew what they were getting into. These samples might have already taken place prior to the Board of Health requiring it, just the Board of Health didn't have any knowledge. Or we would get a sample back from a prospective buyer prior to the rule coming into place saying, I have radon in my well, that I'm proposing to buy. Is this a health concern? Or there's a lot of iron and manganese, or, so they were asking questions, and I found this a good opportunity to educate and give some informational background on, to protect a buyer as they're, as they are, as they go through the process. This area is known to have a lot of iron. It's this is an aesthetic problem, but it's not harmful to your health, but it could ruin your your laundry or something.
Yeah. I think what we need, though, is a pretty clear and direct pointed statement that pretty much up front tells people that this is applicable to any well in existence in the town of Mendon. Because one could infer that, because we kind of start out in section 3.0 when we say requirements for private wells. The leading paragraph is no private well constructed after the effective date of this regulation shall be deemed a source of potable water unless it is constructed in accordance with this regulation. One could think, one could maybe infer, well, mine was built in 1980 something, so this may not apply to me. I think we just want to incorporate some clear-cut direct statement that blatantly states that this regulation is designed to cover any well on any property, any residential property in the town of Mendon. In a nice way, but something that's pretty clear and pretty direct.
Agreed.
But that's easy enough to insert,
All right. I would think that we'd insert it up in the upper sections, either under authority or definitions.
Yeah, I would say purpose and authority is a good place. It's right there on the top, and it's the lead into the regulations. I would agree.
And we probably could insert it to remind people in section 3 in the beginning as well. Okay.
Alan, your thoughts?
No, I'm in agreement with that, and I have no issue stating that the owner is responsible to have this taken care of prior to transfer of the deed. I would think that the owner and the realtor would be very motivated to get that taken care of, in order to transfer the property. So I have no problem making that a written requirement. So I like what Hopkinton did. Thank you.
I think I put my note in that section to say consider modifying that. So maybe that's what we were briefly thinking about in the past already. I have a note in probably in the document that you have.
In the introduction on the first purpose and authority, Tom?
No, 5.58, where it says where the water sample collected. I have a note to consider modifying. I think you have that document. I'll say add owner's responsibility.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, should we go to water quality? How much more time you want to spend on this?
We do have other boards on for the town of Mendon to go over. So, Tom, Alan, do you want to put a pin in this so far, or do you want to continue on?
I'm good with
I think this is good enough
what we
to
accomplished tonight.
Yeah, that's fine with me as well. Yeah, we're moving forward.
all right, so I got some notes here, and I might have to call Jack if I need to trigger my memory on something. So I will make some adjustments and then send over a new edited document. And then we can take a look at it and then move forward to the next section.
Perfect.
All right, do you need
Thank
me
you,
for
Tom
anything
Ryder.
else? I owe you a bunch of stuff, I know, Jack. So,
That's fine. It's fine. You got a few more days.
not really. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
All right, thank you, guys. Have a good night. Have a
Thank you,
good
Tom.
Fourth, please.
You too.
Okay, so we'll move on to rooster permit regulations. Jack, who do we have available to discuss this?
We have Ellen Gould from the Board of Agriculture. And you're on mute, Ellen.
I am? Doesn't say I am.
There
All
you go.
right,
No,
can you
Ellen.
hear me now? Hi,
There you go.
sorry.
Hi.
There she is.
And I think we have some other people from the AgCom here too, but I'm happy to chime in.
All right, so with the rooster permit regulations, I had Missy in a couple of weeks ago showing her exactly what we wanted to do, and she made the recommendation of having a keeping of animals permit.
And I would like to say that we approached the rooster permitting because it's a noise nuisance. Other animals in our town, we haven't run into any complaints. Horses don't make noises, you know, so chickens, other than roosters, don't make a lot of noise. It's not a noise issue. You know, so we don't think all animals need to be permitted, and we don't understand why that would be necessary.
All right, so it's more of a noise nuisance than a animal
Yes.
type thing. Okay.
Yep. So
Ellen, Tom, any comments on that?
one of the big recommendation that we really wanted to bring to your attention in the general requirements, it was that D and E of the documents that we sent over, we recommend that the rooster housing should be located at a distance of 150 feet from all abutters, and the rooster should be kept between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. in a fully enclosed structure or coop designed to minimize noise and light. So we think that's really the crucial and the most important part of the document that we sent to you. The rest of it is really, we can do without almost. So those are the things that we thought were really, really important.
Tom, when we were talking about this, were we discussing like a manure plan type of thing? Were we worried about the defecations of the roosters piling up or anything? Tom Fickner? Tom, if you're there, you're on mute. Alan, do you have anything to say about this?
Have we had any input from Danielle on this? I know that she owned a rooster at one point, and she is our acting animal inspector.
I did reach out to Danielle. She has not responded in detail. She said she'd look it over. And I also sent it to Dan Marksman, who's also in charge of the Blackstone Valley Partnership for Public Health. Because I know he's designed a couple of permit applications for animals, but this is more of a noise nuisance type of thing.
Yeah,
Any
the
response?
agricultural, we haven't run into any other complaints about farm animals in the town of Mendon. So we really don't feel that an overall reaching thing is necessary.
Okay.
You know, most people have barns and they're inspected by the barn inspector. And then when there are, you know, so the only thing we feel right at this point that needs to be regulated is because of the noise. And so, but if we adjust that, I mean, and I can look at the document. We went overboard on the document we sent on the permitting. I can cut it back and make it a lot simpler, easier to read and for people to understand. And we could resubmit it to you. If that's helpful, you can let us know. We'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, because I tried looking at other regulations for roosters in surrounding towns, and a lot of surrounding towns do not permit roosters unless it's a farmland zoning area for them.
Right. But if you attended the last town meeting, I think you'll see that I think we got the impression strongly that people in Mendon still want to have the right to own these things as hobbyists.
Yeah.
Up in Sterling, Massachusetts, that's one of the biggest for a long time. They have the biggest poultry and fowl show in New England. And, people have a rooster so they can breed them and show them. And taking away someone's hobby, we feel, would be wrong. That would be like telling people, well, you can't have that fancy car because it makes noise on, when you turn it on. So
No, I
we
agree.
think that within reason, people should be able to have roosters within reason. And we feel the 150 feet, enclosing them between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., and also making sure that there's some kind of noise and light, and that can be up to the individual, and the permitting would be inspected by somebody. Somebody would have to take a look at that to say, oh, because you don't want to open like a peacock enclosure. Peacocks can be in a, just like a big open cage almost, except with a roof. We don't want a rooster in that. We want them in like something that you can close the window at night, vents at the sides so they have air, and light sensitive, meaning they can pull down a shade, you can close the window, and those roosters are not going to be able to be heard more than 150 feet away from their abutters. So we feel those were the three things that were really, when we did our research into other towns that are similar to Mendon's makeup, we found in our research those things were reasonable to be asked for.
All right, and you do want to limit it to one per resident, one location, one rooster per
Yeah,
location?
I think so. Yeah, I don't see why you would need to have more than one. I think one is reasonable. Absolutely. You don't need more than one. Absolutely. And so if you want, we can cut back. I mean, we went overboard on what you wanted on the regulation. Like, we could cut back on the hearings. I don't know if you want to address the penalties or not. So we went overboard when we sent you this document. We can cut it back and make it simpler for people if that's what you would like.
Well, better too much information than not enough.
Okay,
If you don't mind, give me another week with this so I can really, now that I know it's more of a nuisance than more of a keeping of animals permit. I do apologize for misunderstanding.
right.
I'll go through it again one more time, and I will see if any changes, see if we can take anything out, or see if there's anything else we can add in. But if you're saying that there's a lot more information than what's needed,
Yes.
I'll be glad to cross some items off and go from
Okay.
there. All right?
Jack, can you
Great.
hear me?
We just think the very first part, the general requirements, are the most critical part of the document that we sent to you. So
All right.
that's really, we thought, the key to this whole thing was.
All right. Alan, Tom, do you have any comments?
Yeah, Alan, you can go ahead first.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Does the ad committee by any chance on their website, social media, whatever you guys have available, is there a suggested structure, or is something like that available if someone were to reach out to your organization?
At this point,
to help
no. At this point, no. We do, the Agricultural Commission does host a farm days for people that are interested in, that are already farming, and people that want to have livestock. And we do advertise that. COVID kind of threw a monkey wrench in that, but so we've started it up again, meeting twice a year, inviting the public so we can educate them on how to be good neighbors when you own livestock. So that's one of the things that we're getting back into the swing of doing that. We don't have anything in our website. I mean, we don't have a website. We only have the town links. And if we go ahead with the permitting, we would certainly have a link there, and with suggested more detailed information that people could print out. But I mean, at this point, that's a good suggestion. We can certainly work on that also on our end.
Okay, thank you, because I know the ad committee wants to be very helpful, and it's very possible that someone investigating housing a rooster would benefit greatly from that information, because what if the proposed structure is beyond their skill level, They would need to recruit some help or be able to
Oh, yeah.
purchase a structure from
Yeah.
someone. So,
What we did
this way
is
here, they know what they're getting into.
we took our guidelines from, also kind of this came about by when the state requires people that are, that are, legal farmers. They give you suggestions on how to do things. They don't tell you exactly how. So if someone might come up and drop a shed from Home Depot and put shutters on the window, and that's fantastic. Someone else might want to build something. So we don't want to tell them exactly what to do, but we want to but we can certainly give them guidelines.
Very good. Thank you.
Also, I do have a hand raised by Karen.
Yes, can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes.
Hi. Just wondering about the permitting. Would it be a one-time thing or yearly? And what would the fee be and where would the money go to?
I'm not sure who you want to answer that. The
Ellen, I
fee
think
would,
you should answer that. I'd like Ellen to answer.
Ellen, me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
the fee would be up to the Board of Health because someone has to check the permit. So the fee would be dependent on who they ask to check. I would think the barn inspector, that might be somebody that would also add the rooster permitting to the barn inspector. So I would think that the Board of Health would be responsible for establishing the fee. I would hope that the barn inspector would just add the roosters onto their, and what was your third question?
Where would the funds go? From
They
the
would,
fees?
I would imagine that's up to the Board of Health, but I think the way it's set up is they have to pay the barn inspector to inspect that, make sure everybody's following the rules and regulations. So the money would go into the Board of Health and they would pay the barn inspector. Is that
Okay, how does
John?
how does the barn inspector get paid now?
Alan, do
Out
you
of
want
the
to
Board of
address
Health
that one?
budget. Yeah, it comes out of the Board of Health budget, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so that would give you a
Obviously-
little bit of a cushion.
Well, if the barn inspector has to do more work, then the barn inspector's
Mhm.
salary may go up.
Yep. And
The-
okay,
the
I guess that's all
present
the
bo-
question.
The present
Excuse
Board of
me?
Health does everything they can
Have a
to
speaker?
make money.
It's coming out of here.
Do try to cover all our expenses.
What if you disconnect your
Good question,
earphones
ma'am.
from it?
That doesn't even go into.
I think somebody's mic might be active at the moment.
Well, mine is because I was asking a question.
Okay, yeah, I heard some background voices. I know somebody else triggered their mic by accident.
Oh. Okay, well, I'm all
Go
set
ahead,
with
Alan,
my
not to
question.
interrupt you.
No, that's fine. I as long as I answered the person's question, I'm good.
Okay, and we don't know when that fee will be known, right? That's for future date?
That would be for a
Yes,
future
ma'am.
date.
Okay, and it would be one rooster per household?
Can you click on raise hand?
Hmm?
Can you click on raise
If
hand
you
again?
have 20 acres?
Which one?
I mean, I thought there was a right to farm law where you could really have as many animals as you wanted.
So the right to
I
farm bylaw
believe-
only protects commercial farms.
Right, and we do have a few commercial farms, correct?
So if you are a commercial farm, the whole rooster permitting process does not affect you at all. You won't have under our guidelines, what we sent to the Board of Health, you won't have to even apply for a permit. If you're protected
great.
under the right to farm bylaw, which is 2 acres plus income or 5 acres plus.
61A.
Perfect, thank you, that's what I needed to hear, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Zach and Jane, do you have your hand up?
Yes. I had a few people reach out to me this week. Actually, Brendan Chanel, he couldn't be here tonight because of he's having his baby, but he wanted to add in something that was any like with 150 feet or any guidelines for the roosters. Any new properties built closer to that area, not be maybe like it could be grandfathered in, or so like if somebody's building in your backyard and you have roosters previously, it doesn't affect him. I don't know if we can add that in, if it would be right to, but I believe it should be. If you're building in the backyard of a farm, then it should, you should know what you're getting into.
So
Alan,
Zach,
a
are you saying you want to not include those folks that currently have roosters?
So
Am I
if you-
understanding?
So if you have a permitted rooster and somebody builds a house directly next to yours, which is happening on Washington Street right now, then that shouldn't be affected by, like if they're building a house and it's too close, your permit shouldn't be pulled because now there's another house or 50 condos behind you.
Oh, I see, yeah. So if the residence doesn't meet a particular guideline that we might put forth on a regulation because of a new property that popped up next to an existing permitted person. I got
Exactly.
you. Okay.
We also have a hand raised by Jay.
Yeah, hey guys, how you doing? This is Jay Kraus on 17 Washington Street. Just curious, because I was at the town meeting when this popped up originally. Is this in response to that?
Yes.
The regulations that are being proposed?
Yes, it
That was a
is.
yes?
Yes, yes,
And
absolutely.
would I be accurate in saying that this was in response to a complaint from a particular resident, not necessarily a number or a group of residents?
Can I answer that? It's
Yeah,
it's not from one particular person, no. It's
Yeah, I
more
guess,
than one, it's more than one person, yes.
Yeah, so the impression I got from the town meeting that I attended was that there was someone who was pretty vocal about it. It seems like we're catering to the minority here, and we're a town that has a history and a culture that stems from agriculture and farming, and it just seems like it goes against everything this town is about and comes from to even put any of these regulations in place. People want to have roosters, they should have roosters. And that's just my opinion for what it's worth. I don't
Yes,
have
but
roosters. I have neighbors.
When the
that have
neighborhood
them.
is new and the people all around this neighborhood are complaining and there's nothing being done by the police or anybody else, then they ask the Ag Commission to come up with a solution. And this is our solution. We're not catering to anybody. We're trying to encourage neighborly action.
Yeah, I
Yes, Ellen.
understand. You have a job to do, and I totally respect that. I would say in response to that they probably chose the wrong town to live in, but they live here, so they have rights too. I totally understand that, but I would just say, let's not lose our heritage. That's all.
Can I respond?
Yep, go ahead.
I think the gentleman, whoever that was on, is under the wrong impression. It was not just one person that is requesting or had a complaint about the roosters. It was multiple people. There were enough people concerned about this that there was enough signatures for this to get on the town ballot. To me, that's significant. So I think it needs to be addressed. And I think this is a very fair and equitable way to do this by saying, yes, you can have a rooster, but it needs to be 150 feet from your abutters. And that's where I think the 150 feet from a butter, even if you don't have a house, I don't know, maybe a butter, I don't understand what a butter actually means, but I would think even if there's a property line there, that's your abutter and that's your 150 feet. So, and asking them to be, put them in a noise and light sensitive environment, I think that should solve our problem and make everybody happy. People can still have their rooster. You only need one to fertilize your eggs. You only need one for the poultry show. You don't need two. So I think we're allowing people to have their hobbies, and their right to grow their own food, because yes, I mean, your chickens get old, you have to retire them. So I think this is a good win-win for people, and it's very simple, and it's not regulating every farm animal, and it certainly doesn't regulate anyone that falls under the Massachusetts General Law of 40A.
Yeah, I respect all of that, and I think it is a good attempt to reach middle ground. I also, go back to that meeting where there were enough people that were opposing additional regulations to cause it to get continued, and they could make a decision at that point. And I would bet that there's probably more proponents than there are opponents of owning roosters and chickens. And let's face it, we have regulations at every which way, everywhere we turn, there's new regulations, so many that it becomes hard to follow. And I just go back to our heritage and culture as a town, and I'll leave it at that. That's just my 2 cents, and I just wanted to throw it out there for folks to hear.
Thank you very much. Your opinion is appreciated.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jay. I understand what Jay is saying, because part of me kind of feels similar now. I'm actually someone who did not grow up in Mendon, but I have a great appreciation for Mendon's heritage and what they're about, in understanding that they're an agricultural-based community and a farm community. It's kind of built into our, I'll call it our doctrine, for lack of a better word, right? And so I understand what maybe Jay is saying. If folks are coming into a community, in some cases, maybe they should kind of be aware of the type of community, its foundation that they're coming to, maybe before making a decision, if they're coming from a community that's a little bit different, that doesn't have a farming element, doesn't have an agricultural element as part of its root heritage. I mean, reality is we all know that many, many, many years ago, everything was farmland at one point, right? All the towns around us, but some have grown more away from that than Mendon has, which I think actually kind of is what kind of makes Mendon special, really. So I can relate to that personally. So along that thought, let me throw this out. In lieu of a regulation, and I'll have Alan maybe speak to this too, what would the thought be if, from a Board of Health perspective, we were to look at this as a nuisance and address it from a Board of Health perspective as a nuisance? Thoughts?
Tom?
Yes.
So are you saying that particular rooster became a nuisance, would not have to follow this guideline? You had a rooster that created a nuisance, would be the solution.
So a base element of what a Board of Health has responsibility for, there is an element, many of the aspects that we cover. One of them is considered a nuisance, whether it be a private, public, or statutory in nature. And a lot of the nuisances, you can apply it to sanitary code, more direct health code related, but nuisance can also be applied to noise or something that interferes with another individual's, let's say, peaceful enjoyment of their property. That does fall under the purview of a Board of Health. So again, not to say that going the way of a permitting is not the way to go. I'm not saying that. There's merit to that because it sets up structure, kind of like what we were talking about in the previous topic of private well regulations. Sometimes you have to create a structure that everybody is following the same guideline, and everybody knows up front what the expectations are. But I throw that out just in doing some research and reading. I just didn't know if addressing it directly as a nuisance where the Board of Health can engage directly on the issue with our animal inspector, if that was potentially an opportunity or not. Back to you.
All
Ellen,
right.
before,
Yes, go
Alex,
ahead.
did you want to add something more, Ellen?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I on? Okay. Yeah, we thought the permitting was kind of controlling it as a noise nuisance, but maybe permitting isn't the right words to use. I mean, somehow there has to be guidelines drawn up for ownership of roosters when you're not on a, Massachusetts general law covered under the 40A. So, so we thought by permitting, and the history of this, that we came to this point is because the animal inspector, the police department, and the barn inspector and the agricultural commission had to all get involved to handle this rooster problem. And it was two home. Yes, there were two locations that were out of control, that were not being good neighbors. We'll put it that way. They're not being good neighbors. They were not. So, but it took a few months. It took several months for this issue to get resolved. The animal control person wasn't able to do it because there's no teeth behind it. There are no regulations at all regarding this. The barn inspector can only go and make sure they have water and they're housed properly. It doesn't control the amount or the noise of this. So all of these other things that are already in place, they did what they were supposed to do, but it didn't quite solve the problem. I mean, it got very close. The people realized eventually that they were not being good neighbors, and they went from having multiple roosters down to one rooster. So we felt that permitting would keep it so in the future, all of these smaller neighborhoods could still have a rooster, and they would realize that they're only allowed one, and it has to be controlled by noise and light and proximity to their neighbors. If there's another way to do that besides a permit, I'm all open for that. I think that's good. Maybe it doesn't have to be a permit per se, but I'm not quite sure how to go about tackling that.
So with, in kind of doing some research, Ellen, with kind of looking at what a Board of Health has oversight for, I had come across this nuisance category.
Okay.
And I know we've talked about, noise specifically is a more common word that people use. So if there's an actual noise issue that basically, in this case, becomes a nuisance, the board has the authority to act, from what I'm reading, pretty directly and pretty swiftly to eliminate the nuisance. If the board feels it's justified to engage directly with that homeowner to essentially, and then we'd probably have to determine it, come to an agreed confirmation that it is indeed an actual nuisance, that by right as a Board of Health, we could actually be required to remove or destroy the nuisance.
Okay, I mean, then that certainly could work, but I think wouldn't that need to be said somewhere in rules and regulations, or rather than permitting, would there have to be a law or something? So it has to be written somewhere for people to refer to this. correct?
Yes, it already actually exists in the Manual of Laws and Regulations relating to boards of health in the state of Massachusetts,
Okay.
under the Department of Public Health.
Okay. Then
You know what I mean?
So then our other guest here, Richard Green, who we have been working closely with because he was the gentleman that started the petition. I'm sure he told us that it took several months of he called the police officers. The police felt there was nothing that could do. He called, he made complaints to the Board of Health, he told us. He made complaints to the animal inspector, and probably a year later or over a year now, we're still, talking about this. So, I mean, I'd be happy to just hand it over to you guys. That's fine.
I just wonder, I don't know, Alan, what your thoughts are, if that's a viable option. Again, it would probably be something that we'd have to confirm from our own determination. And I know we've had multiple people involved, and I'm not looking to necessarily delay the process. It's obviously been very, very much an issue for those directly involved, the folks that have had to kind of deal with this in the neighborhood, and interrupts obviously their daily life, as a nuisance. But it appears as though we as the Board of Health can engage directly and really, in no uncertain terms, have a really direct and upfront conversation with the owners. Says, look, this has been deemed a nuisance, and as such, we as the Board of Health have the right to remove it, unless you want to kind of comply with some basic things that could maybe help mitigate the situation and make it better for everybody involved. Thoughts?
I would like to consult Danielle about this more. I know she has experience owning a rooster, where I have no experience in that matter, and very little contact in my lifetime with a rooster. Only because, based on what you're telling me, we have the authority to deal with a situation like that. I would want to make sure that we not only have the authority, but we have the process in place and the people in place to do that. Because even if we seized the rooster, we need something what do we do with the rooster? So I'd want to make sure that we have a clear process for dealing with this type of situation, whether it be a rooster or another animal. The only thing that I can think of that we've acted on in the past, with the help of our animal inspector, was the situation we had over on 106 Millville Road, where the MSPCA there helped us out and got involved. So I'd like to have a clear understanding of what the process is if we were to get into a situation. And then also the work that the ad committee has done, I would very possibly like to see that become maybe not a regulation, but a guideline. And make it available to people that are in this, doing this type of a hobby, so that they know what they're getting into. It's real easy to go to the store and buy some birds, but they might not, really know what they're getting into if they didn't, grow up in a situation like that. So, guidelines are good. They give you information, they educate you, they give you, ideas on where to reach out if you're having a problem, because things don't always go as planned. So I think it would be very helpful But I like what you read, Tom, and I understand what you read, and I'm glad that it's already written. But we definitely know that we need to have a clear process in place so that we can act. I know in the past we had a situation with some goats that were being housed improperly, and we were able to deal with that. But currently, we do not have a formal animal inspector employed by the Board of Health. We have an interim animal inspector. So that would be something else that would definitely need to be put in play so that we had a qualified individual to act. Anybody else care to comment?
We have Zach and Jane who would like to say a few words.
Jane, you want to add?
The only thing I'm thinking of is that by doing the permit, we have a record of who has what. And the people that have been complaining aren't new to the area. They've been here for 36 years. It's other people who moved into the area that have the roosters. So it's not like it's a yuppie thing or something like that. These people have a right to have a decent night's sleep. And by using the permits, we can track down and help both parties resolve it, the issues. And that's it.
Well, my only response to that, Jane, would be, I understand where you're coming from, but I don't know if a permit in and of itself is going to actually do that. Really, what's going to do it is when somebody comes forward with a complaint, which then that's when the appropriate groups take action. So the permit in and of itself, yeah, it does let us know who has one, at least as far as moving forward, because I don't know that we're talking about permitting or looking to find everybody in town who already has one and have them have a permit. I think, we'll be talking about just moving forward, or we're talking about everybody now. We have to find everybody and make everybody have a permit. Is that what we're saying, Jane?
No, I think the permit would give us, like the one complaint, it would, if they had a permit and we went there and they weren't following because they're on a small lot, and when we went there, they had 3 roosters when me and Danielle went. So they wouldn't be complying with the permit. So I think it was more for the complaints, not for,
Okay. So, well, then so that is a way to go. I'm not saying I would rule it out per se. I mean, like I said, there's structure there with regard to what's being presented from a permitting perspective. You're giving guidelines to people to follow who want to venture into this, and I'm all for that. I just kind of wonder if, in lieu of another set of guidelines and or regulations, if having the ability, as it appears we have as an entity, as a Board of Health, if this couldn't be addressed under the nuisance guideline, or a nuisance problem, if you will, that a local Board of Health has the ability to engage upon directly and remedy through what we would tell them they would have to do if you want to keep your rooster.
But the thing is that unless we have the permits, we're not going to know who has chickens. The barn inspectors inspect the bigger farms. They don't go around to everybody who has a rooster. We have no idea how many people have roosters or chickens. So without that permit,
well, the point of this is to
call up the president of the Board of Health and say, go talk to that person in the middle of the night?
If the point of this is to track or create a database for folks that have roosters, that's one thing. What I'm referring to is when an issue happens that affects a neighbor or a resident, and they come before whomever to engage on a complaint such as this, then the appropriate authority, in this case, what appears to me to be us, the Board of Health, has an avenue here that we could follow without necessarily having to create another regulation and or permitting process, but can engage directly on this resident to say, look, we have a nuisance problem here at your property. This is what you need to do, or we're going to eliminate the nuisance, period.
All right, Ellen, you want to chime in on this?
Yes, thank you. I think as long, I actually think, and I'm gonna disagree with Zach and Jane here. I think the permitting, if we wanted to not do the permitting and it's addressed and there's a process that's clearly stated for some that we could refer to. So say someone's in the future has a problem, they have a complaint, they call the police department, they call the Department of Health. As long as there's a definition of what is a nuisance, and then a process of how that's addressed. And that way we can also refer to it as an agricultural commission and support this process. I'm all for it, but there has to be a clear, defined process that we can all support and lean on, and that works. So the experience that we just all went through is that there is nothing really in place at the moment. And so people's frustration levels got very, very high. So if we could work towards, it doesn't have to be a permit. If we can work towards establishing a process that we can all see and understand, I'm all for it. I'm absolutely all for it. And I love the suggestion that you guys made for the Agricultural Commission that we can to put links on our town page on what good neighbors would be, what good ownership for having a rooster would be. We can direct people in that way too. So I'm all for making a clear pathway to better understanding between citizens and what's a nuisance. I'm all for it.
Okay, we have Jay with his hand raised. Jay, go ahead.
Hey guys, I just want to say that that's, in my opinion, that's a much more palatable approach to this, and it's giving people the freedom, to own chickens. Permitting is not going to keep a rooster quiet, right? And I think some guidelines is a great step forward. I actually joined this meeting, to hear the discussion about Washington Street. So to think that there's a potential for a number of units exceeding 25 to be built on a plot that was zoned for one unit, and that people might actually entertain that. But then on the other hand, we're going to tell somebody that they can't own roosters. I can't wrap my brain around that. Like, freedom, like, be proud of our culture, our heritage, like I said, and I appreciate the previous comments. This is who we are. That people have roosters, and you just got to live with it. Here's some guidelines to follow. Be proud of it. Be proud of who we are. Protect it.
Okay, thank you. Ellen or Tom?
Alan, go ahead.
If I may, I'm looking at my last barn inspector's report, the owner's copy. And there is a line 7, poultry, chickens or turkeys. Now, this is put out by the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture. I don't know why we couldn't instruct our animal inspector to make a note if there was a rooster on site. There also is line 9, which is other. Now, this barn book gets turned into the state, I believe. But we do, I believe we have the right to look at it. So, we could, possibly be able to understand the number and the type of animal we have in town if we wanted to, kind of track that. But Jane has a very good point. I have 2 horses, so I'm real small. Someone who might have chickens and a rooster are even smaller and probably less apt to get under the barn inspector's eyes than I am. So there are probably a lot of animals in town on a very small scale that aren't accounted for with this process. Usually from talking with the barn inspector in the past, a lot of times they get their information from someone else that they're inspecting. Someone, you know, who is new to this inspection process might say, well, geez, 2 doors down, they've got, you know, 6 goats. Well, now the barn inspector has become aware that there's another site that they have to inspect because there's livestock on it. But that takes a long time for everybody to know. A few years back, we had a horse on the Mendon Northbridge line that unfortunately succumbed to Triple E, and I believe that that particular animal and any animals that might have been on that property had flown under the radar because no one ever reported it. There wasn't a lot going on, you know, animals being transported in or out. So it's not 100% foolproof, to Jane's point, that we're going to be able to account for all the animals in town. If we needed to know exactly how many animals there were and what type they were. So, you know, circling back to what Tom said, if there's a complaint and it relates to noise, it certainly is going to come under the eyes of the Board of Health. And as Ellen said, if there's a clear process to deal with that, that everybody is aware of, maybe not the animal owner at the particular time, then things should run smoother than they had in the past. Jack, anybody else want to comment?
Nobody else's hand is raised.
So my suggestion at this point is I would like to have further discussion with our present animal inspector, and you know, keep the process going to decide, you know, what method of guidance should be offered to not only the residents that own animals, but the unfortunate neighbor that may be experiencing something that, you know, is affecting their quality of life, so that we can keep, you know, we can take care of both sides of this this decision. Thank you.
Let me throw this out to Ellen, if I could, or Zach or Jane. With regard to the particular situation that has been the impetus for, you know, this discussion, what is the frequency of the nuisance? I'm going to use that word. What is the frequency of the nuisance to the neighbors?
The neighbors have reported to us that the rooster crows all night and all day. And so the nighttime for us is really the issue, is I think is really the disturbing issue, is so if it was enclosed in a noise and light sensitive environment at 7 p.m., it shouldn't be an issue. But if it's a free range rooster and it's out all night long, you know, on its property, but there's no respite from the noise. So you know, I don't know. It got to the point where it got to town meeting. So obviously this is, and it continues. Our understanding from my most recent email that I received is that this still continues. It's still continuing. The noise is there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And outside of the immediate residents, Ellen, have you and or others with other groups, whether it be the Ag Commission or the Police Department or what have you, can you validate and confirm that it is indeed
I spoke with the chief of, I spoke with the chief of police, and he did say they swung by there in the middle of the night, I think like 1 or 2 a.m., and it was crowing. So yes,
Okay, great. Okay, I just wanted to, just to make sure that we had other sources that can validate that, yep, it's indeed happening. Okay,
Yes.
thank you,
Okay,
Zach.
we also have Ann Mazzarelli who has her hand raised.
Hi, yes, thank you. Thank you for taking my comments. Yeah, my husband and I live on 20 Neck Hill Road. So we have one rooster next to us at number 18 that crows day and night. And then the one across the street would call to it. And that one I think is gone because we haven't heard it. But I just want to reiterate what everybody else who has been going through this is it crows day and night. It starts at 4:30 in the morning, and even with white noise, fans, the caliber of the pitch of that rooster is so high, you can hear it above everything. And so it's really a noise issue. We both love animals. I love chickens. I grew up on a farm, but there's no need to have a rooster or a neighbor who allows their rooster to crow all night and all day long. I mean, it's, you can be out on the deck trying to eat dinner and it's just crowing constantly. And the other thing is the number 18 is a duplex or a condo. So that coop is right on our property line. It's a plastic barn. The door is open all the time, so we can hear it constantly. And those animals have the run of the property, and so there's no stopping the noise. I can't even call my dog. If I call my dog, the rooster starts crowing. So I'm just speaking for not just myself, but other people that live behind us on Bicknell. They've complained about it, and other people that live on Neck Hill Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Well, from my perspective, I know Alan had mentioned about getting to our animal inspector and having the conversation, but to be honest, and with the validation that I'm hearing tonight, I don't believe there's any reason why we as a Board of Health cannot engage directly and firmly on the issue and get a pretty solid point across pretty directly and pretty succinctly. That would be my view.
All right, with that being
Tom,
said,
I wasn't aware that this was still going on. It sounded to me in previous conversation that they had eliminated the problem roosters, even though they still had one. So I'm rather alarmed to hear that this is still going on. And based on what you have read to us, I don't think we have any choice but to act on it. I hate to I hate to think what the consequences might be, but we definitely need to get in contact with our animal inspector and the animal control officer that serves Mendon. I agree, and have to visit this property owner. Thank you.
okay, we have Jay with his hand raised. Jay?
Yeah, team, I'm just hearing the scenario, and it seems like it's a perfect trial case for the situation and the potential resolution that you guys have drawn up. See what happens. And maybe there's consideration for a fine for people who don't comply, as opposed to all the regulations up front. If you give them a warning and they don't heed it, and you continue to have the problem, impose a fine on them, and give them an opportunity to take care of it. And if they don't, there's repercussions for it, including potentially taking the bird away. Seems like a very common sense approach to it.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
All right, there's no other hands raised. So Alan, Tom, any more on the discussion?
At the
Not at
moment,
this
I'm
time.
good. I think we need to engage and take action would be my summary response, to be honest with you. I think we have an obligation to move on it.
I agree. I'm hopeful that we can have a conversation with the homeowner that will produce a solution. The last thing I want to do is have to go all the way and seize the bird. I'm hopeful that we can come, to some dialogue on this, even though it appears that it hasn't worked in the past. I'm willing to give it a shot. Thank
All
you.
right. We do have one more comment by Zach and Jane. Zach, Jane.
So when I did go over there and talk with the homeowners, with Danielle, they were open to getting rid of them. I don't know about the other neighbor that was the problem, but the people that I spoke to were okay with getting rid of them if they were told to. So if, you guys went over there and talked to them, I think you can clear up that one. I did talk to her a couple times. So if you need, somebody that's familiar with them to come, I have no problem coming with you or with Danielle.
Thank you. I
So-
appreciate the offer.
So Zach is just saying, so you've actually spoken to the individuals who have the rooster that is of most concern here and created the most disruption?
Yeah.
And they were open to getting rid of the rooster?
If they were told to, if they had to. I told them this was when it was going to town meeting and everything. And I told them that, their rooster was probably the cause of it. And they were okay with getting rid of it if they were told to, and if they had to.
Well, if that's good to hear. It's rather kind of unfortunate that it's got to this point where apparently the complaints of neighbors didn't seem to be enough, that they're looking to an authoritative group to basically just come in and say, fix it or lose it. And I have no problem in actually making that statement to the owner, fix it or lose it. Because it just sounds like it kind of went way beyond what unfortunately it should have gone to be honest with you, time-wise. And I feel bad that, we hadn't, the board been able to provide this sooner as a good option. It just seems like we can directly engage based on our authority as a board and say, look, this is the deal. You got to do something, take the corrective action that is felt to address the situation, as proposed by Ellen and the group, take those steps to mitigate, or the rooster's got to go.
Tom, I would think it would be a good idea to actually bring that section in print in hand.
Sure.
And let's see if we can get this taken care of so that everybody can live in peace. And, it just, unfortunately, it seems to be a particular rooster. And I've heard that, people that live adjacent to a property that has roosters, some of them, they get along just fine. Unfortunately, this, is probably a rooster that gives roosters a bad name.
Zach, just out of curiosity, in your interactions, what have you found to be the demeanor of the resident?
So we spoke with the wife, and she was really nice, receptive to basically everything we were telling her. We talked her into, they had 3 roosters. We talked them into getting rid of 2 of them in that one.
Okay.
So they were open to.
How long have they been down to 1, out of curiosity? Do we know?
So when me and Danielle went, it had to have been 2 months ago, 3 months ago. They did have about 30 juveniles. So those do grow up. I don't know what they have done since. So maybe it's worth a follow-up either way with Danielle.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. May I ask a question?
Just a quick follow-up, Alan, for a sec. Is it a family? Are there children in this domicile? Is it just a
I believe
couple
so.
or?
Yeah. I believe there's
There are,
children.
okay. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Alan.
When you say they do have juveniles that grow up, so they are raising roosters?
Yes.
Okay. It might not be a good question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
No,
If you-
they're raising their own produce, all right? They're raising chickens to eat, and you can't always get the perfect ratio of male to female. So they're hatching their own chickens, and they're getting to the right size to be put in the freezer. And so they may have a preponderance of roosters at the moment. I don't know.
Okay. I guess the question that I'm asking, and it's purely from lack of knowledge about this topic, if you were to have a problem rooster on the property, a rooster that doesn't cooperate the way we'd like them to, if there are juvenile roosters, would they imitate problem rooster?
They would compete with it. So roosters all have different, they're all different, just like humans. They all have different personalities. Some are really loud, some are quiet. So 10 could grow up and be not a problem. And then there's one, I believe it's like an alpha rooster, I would say.
Okay.
That's the problem. It is a big one that's a lot bigger than all the other ones.
Okay. So they really need, if this is what they're doing, you know, raising their own produce, in this case, chickens, they need to eliminate, if they have a problem rooster, that rooster, if I understand this correctly, needs to be eliminated as quickly as possible so that the other roosters that might not be a problem don't try to compete with it.
Could be. Maybe.
So-
We don't, we don't know exactly what the situation is. So we just have to go and check it out. But that's why, we strongly suggest that people that have roosters keep them in, in soundproofed, at 7 p.m. Put them in a light restricted and a noise dampening environment, and don't let them out till 7 a.m. But if they're in a open environment 24/7, that's not being a good neighbor. So, I mean, maybe they don't have to get rid of their rooster. Maybe they just need to house it differently. But that's what I was saying earlier. There needs to be clearly defined what is a nuisance? How can you get rid of this? How can you handle this so it's not a nuisance? And then if you don't do that, then you have to get rid of it. So, I mean, we need to have that route clearly defined. So
Okay, thank you. I'm
yeah.
trying to get an education and trying to,
I mean, there's
possible
all different,
solution.
there's all different kinds of ways to raise roosters. We're talking about or chickens, or replenishing your flock, so you're never having to go to the store and buy them. I mean, there's lots of ways to do that without causing problems. So what we're talking about is a noise issue. How do you handle a noise issue? So if this one rooster is a noise issue, then you seem to have found a way to handle it, and that's okay.
Right, but I would also like to be able to provide these people, if they're going to continue to do this,
Mm-hmm.
a possible solution or process to prevent this from reoccurring.
Yeah, they need to have the proper environment for them to have a rooster. And that's what we were trying to say with the permitting. But perhaps it doesn't have to be a permit per se, but there has to be something that defines that if you want a rooster, it should be in its coop at 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. And that coop should be noise dampening and light sensitive.
Right.
It's that simple.
It's almost like the present nuisance needs to be eliminated.
It does.
And
yes.
Yeah, and there needs to be a management system in place so that they can properly manage what they're doing.
Correct.
prevent it
Because
from happening again.
I've had roosters. I understand this. I used to you can train your birds to go into their coop at an allotted time. They'll even go running inside to their coop, and then you close the door. And it's that simple. So there are people that are just not good neighbors, or they're not good livestock managers. So we need to be able to give them or show them clear tools that have some teeth. This is what you need to do to solve your problem. And if you don't solve your problem, the resulting is that you don't get to have a rooster. So, so that's what we had hoped the permitting would do. But if we don't want to go the route of permitting, we need to find a route to have those things stated. Like you can't have, like a metal shed. Well, that might not be good enough. Why don't you put some insulation in your metal shed? Why don't you put a shutters over your window? Why don't you lock them up at 7 p.m.? So, we don't want to get to the point where we have to take something away. Perhaps we do, but we should also at the same time say, why don't you fix your environment? And then we're going to come back in 30 days. And if you haven't fixed the environment to prevent this from being a nuisance, then we're going to take it away. Like I said, that's what I said. There has to be a clear process for doing this. So everybody knows what we're doing.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the short education. Thank you.
Okay.
So just out of curiosity, Ellen, kind of in follow-up to what you just said, had at any time anyone in conversation with these folks actually offered up, at least as a suggestive bit of information, those points that you just outlined to them?
I'm going to turn that over to Zach because he was the one that had the time, was available to go.
So me and Danielle did talk to them about that. Like the coop was kind of open. There was not really much to close them into, which is housing them is okay, but it's not going to keep them quiet. So yeah, there's definitely things they can do. And they were
so specifically, Zach, were the suggestions that are what we're talking about now actually put forth to them to modify what they currently do?
We did suggest a few things. I can't remember exactly what. It was a few months ago. So.
Okay, I was just curious what they've actually heard from folks and what they haven't. That's all. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, nobody else has any comments? I think we're done with this topic for this evening.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you all very much. It was very, very enlightening and very informative. And I honestly feel that as a board, I think we have a mechanism here to directly engage and hopefully get them to an understanding what really needs to happen to come to a solution. And I'd like to think that we're going to do this in less than 30 days. I think at this point, 30 days is probably generous. I don't know how quickly behavior gets modified for a rooster if they were to incorporate these suggestions specifically, to dampen the noise and reduce the light. Would we pretty much see something immediately happen?
So
Alan?
From with the roosters that I've had, you can't change their personality once they have the personality. At least the ones that I've had, maybe you can. But from what I believe is that this rooster is going to have to be eliminated.
Okay, so possibly, if anything, an enclosure that provides the noise dampening light sensitivity may mitigate the noise level, but the rooster's behavior would probably continue.
Yes, they could close in the sound, and maybe that would keep everybody happy, but I don't think it's going to change the rooster's attitude.
I gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I think we should try to accomplish a few more on this agenda. as quickly as possible, but we're approaching 2.5 hours.
All right, we do have
So,
Tisha Lowe. Tisha Lowe, who's specifically the realtor that spoke earlier. She's specifically here for the dumpster regulations.
Okay, so that's number 3.
Yep.
Tisha, I don't want to lessen the importance of what you're saying, but let's go for the short version. We're already a little familiar with this. I know you're going to give us an update. I by no means want to rush you, but you've obviously been waiting a long time, so you're up.
Tisha, if you're there, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
It's similar sort of to what we're talking about with neighbors. It's all perspective, right? Some people have different ideas on how to be neighborly, and some people have different ideas on cleanliness versus a toxic environment. And up on Inman Hill Road, what we've been living with is someone who's had a 30-foot dumpster. I think it's recently been sized down. It's also recently been moved, so you can't really see it, but it's still there. And I've spoken with Tanya and Steve, who are both people that work for BP Trucking, and they've confirmed with me that they've had that account for many, many years. That's been established with, I think, Missy from the Board of Health. There's no private pickup. His work debris, he's a contractor, and his household trash goes in it. And my latest conversation with Steve, when the dumpster was being swapped out on the edge of my property and at the entrance to Inman Hill Conservation Area, his dumpster's being swapped out of sight of his own house by his instruction. And the dumpster juice that goes rolling out against my property and at the beginning of the entrance where people walk with their families, their children, their dogs, the dumpster juice spills out of the back, as well as construction debris. The video that I sent the Board of Health showed a board with like 5 or 6 nails sticking straight up out of it, and then the truck rolls down to deliver the new dumpster. God knows where that one came from and what slime is in it. And this has been going on since the late 1990s. So the dumpster's shorter now, and you can't see it from the street, but it's still there. And the last swap out was June 16th. The swap out prior to that was January of 2022. And this is confirmed with BP Trucking. So his household trash, kitchen garbage, everything sat there this last time for 6 months. And last summer, we had quite a heat wave. I'm anticipating another one. It's New England. By September 10th, they emptied it September 10th. It had sat there from July 13th to September 10th, 2 solid months sitting and stinking through 90 to 100 degree weather. Do you need more?
Did I hear you correctly, Tisha? You said since the 1990s?
Yep, he's never, Missy, I believe, is the one at that last meeting when we first touched on this. She looked up the records and she confirmed that it had never been, he's never had private pickup. It's always been through, it's a contracting business. I'm not sure it's a write-off. I'm assuming it's a write-off. And it's a residential neighborhood. It's a scenic road. And we have rats. And I don't have any livestock. And I don't feed my dog outside. And I don't feed my cat outside. And I don't feed birds. And my neighbors stopped feeding their birds as well. And we're dealing with rats. And I know that a lot of people in Mendon were talking about rats during COVID. But they're sticking around and it's disgusting. And what is their source of food? I hired a professional pest person and he told me, there's your source right there. He stood on my lawn, looked around before the dumpster was moved, and there's your source. It's common sense. So no, there's no private pickup. And BP Trucking confirmed that they don't have any regulation. He can put anything in it he wants.
So from a company's perspective, BP isn't concerned about what he puts in there.
They're not. Nope. They don't have any regulations as to what he puts in, and there's no cover on it. So, it's not uncommon at all. I'm out there picking up his dog's pee pads that flew off the top. I'm picking up all sorts of crap for years.
If the definition of nuisance doesn't apply in this case as well, then I don't know what does. Although this is
It's
more.
more than that. It's cleanliness.
More than that.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
toxic. And to
this is a
instruct them.
health
to-
issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to instruct them to, oh yeah, do this. The swap out took over an hour. And the noise of the truck, the noise of the swapping, it's ridiculous. It's unneighborly. And it's toxic. It's unhealthy.
If I may. I'm very disappointed to hear that this is still going on. This is the second time that I thought this was resolved. Rick actually stopped one day when I was taking care of my horses on George Street, and I reported this to the board, told me that he was getting rid of the dumpster and going to a 2-yard dumpster. And this is quite a few months ago. I can't recall exactly when it was, but it was definitely months ago. He did say that he would have a larger dumpster for a short period of time because he was doing a kitchen renovation. And then that would be the end of the large dumpster. But he was going to retain like a 2-yard dumpster. And he was going to start putting dumpsters at his job sites versus bringing construction debris home. So I was very disappointed to see the video and to know that something went wrong with the plan that he told me he had. I'm disappointed a second time around that this hasn't been resolved when I was told that it was going to be.
Well, now the issue is, how long are we going to allow it? Because how long is this kitchen addition going to happen, last? Most of his projects last quite a while.
So there's more than one dumpster on the property right now?
No, there's one. And it's
okay, and it's a large one.
Yeah, it's the one that's on the video.
Okay, so that large open dumpster, that's definitely not a 2-yard dumpster with a lid on it, which is what I was told was going to be on the property.
Well, now he's got the construction going on. So now
Right,
he's got an
okay.
excuse to have it.
Okay.
It doesn't
Yeah,
help with the rats. It doesn't help with the rats or the dumpster juice or the toxic situation that's going on up here.
And you're telling me that the dumpster company is being instructed to do the change out on town property?
Yes, Tanya told me that. Tanya told me that on
Okay.
July 13th of 2021.
Okay, and so obviously based on that conversation, she's aware that they're doing the change out on town conservation property.
I don't know if she's aware of that, but this last time I spoke to a manager named Steve, and I told him that it was against my property and against the entrance to the town conservation property. And he told me they were going to put an order on it to make it so that they can only do it on his property.
Okay. Tom Fichtner, my first thoughts are that we probably need to confirm with BP Trucking that they shouldn't be changing out the dumpster on property owned by the town of Mendon. I don't know what your feelings are on that. I think that's probably the first and the quickest thing that we can do to try to put this, try to correct this situation. And then Where the dumpster regulations aren't complete, I'm not 100% sure, the chairman's not on tonight, where we can go from here other than knocking on Mr. Bizzano's door and trying to correct this situation before it really becomes, well, it's already become a problem. Tom, what are your thoughts on, I don't know if the Conservation Committee has to do it or if Board of Health can do it.
I
It
would
just
like to,
doesn't sound, go ahead.
I would like to add one thing. So even if he does
Yes,
it,
ma'am.
even if he does the swap out on his own property, not far from where he's storing the dumpster currently, he abuts the town fields. He abuts the conservation, the town fields. And so, you know, the dumpster juice runs downhill.
I totally agree. And like I said, what I'm doing right now is trying to come up with something that we can do tomorrow.
Terrific.
A phone call that can be made tomorrow. Of course, I want to get my committee members' opinion on it. But like I said, I'm trying to think of something that we can do tomorrow. And if I'm correct, this phone call to BP with instructions that they need to stop what they're doing should be able to be accomplished in a very timely manner. And then we can move forward from there.
I agree. What
So
about,
I'm trying to come up. Go ahead.
well, I agree what you're trying to do with this. You're trying to come up with something. And I've been thinking the same thing because now he has a construction project going on. So he's going to have the right to a dumpster. But I feel as though he should have some way to have his household garbage picked up through a different company that gets emptied weekly, like we all do.
No, I can't agree more. Again, I'm trying to come up with something that we can act on tomorrow. That would be step one. Because currently we do not have dumpster regulations. It was something that has been in process for a long time and kind of got sidelined when we lost our longtime administrative assistant that was working very hard on this with us. We've picked it back up, and we're talking about a situation that I've personally had face-to-face conversations with the homeowner and was told twice that it was being corrected. So, like I said, I'm trying to come up with something that within our authority that we can do tomorrow.
Yes.
As step one.
Thank you.
Step one isn't going to solve the whole problem, but I'm hoping that it's going to be leading to step two, so that we can get this taken care of. So Tom Fickner, please comment on the direction that I think we have the authority to go in.
Well, you mentioned the key word about authority, and when we use that term authority, I know we've had concerns in the past about the quote-unquote bite that the authority has. My first reaction, and it's unfortunate we have another situation of, it seems to be a lack of respect of one neighbor to another, is a cease and desist order. The question is, what is the basis for implementing a cease and desist? And do we have enough information or backup? It sounds like, and based on information, video and whatnot, I think that's been provided, that we may have that, where we could maybe immediately slap a cease and desist order on him and visit the property with the police department.
I'm fine with that. I would hope that it wouldn't escalate to that level. Perhaps we could reach out to the building department and see if there's a building permit. My limited knowledge would say that if there's not a building permit, maybe the building department could help us out with a cease and desist.
Well, I'm and maybe I shouldn't be this way because I try to keep an open mind, but I'm offended here that it seems like he had not taken your conversations to heart. He's had
Well,
opportunity.
I did try to approach him as a neighbor and as a Board of Health member, because I really wanted this problem to resolve itself at a low level. And again, he stopped on his own time and on my own time and told me what the plan was that I reported to the board. And I really thought that I was never going to see this again. So I'm very disappointed. And I'm still holding out hope that we can, negotiate and get this taken care of. But my hope is fading because this is continuing to go on year after year.
And my hope is that you're right, that this can resolve quickly, because don't hold out hope too long though, because we are being overrun by rats. And there's no other source. Maybe down at the end of the street, there's some goats and chickens, but not up here. Not like
No,
what I'm.
I understand, and again, I'm trying to come up with something that we can accomplish at least step one tomorrow.
Mhm.
But again, I need to make sure that we have the authority to do so. So I don't know if we need to reach out to a member of the building department or a member of the conservation department. Perhaps even the police department can shed light on whether we can tell BP Trucking, for sure that they are not to go on town-owned property and swap out dumpsters. I don't even want to see their truck on town property for any reason at this point, because I feel as though they're partially responsible for this situation at this point. There's no way they can be blind to what they're doing. So, like I said, I'm not 100% sure who we can confirm the level of authority we have to make that phone call. And not only make that phone call, but send an email so they have it in print in front of them that, that particular part of this has to stop immediately. And then as a follow-up to that, step number 2, as Tom has mentioned, some sort of a cease and desist order. But again, we're going to have to reach out to the building department and see if they have, if he has a building permit. That might be a mechanism in which we can do a cease and desist. We can reach out to conservation and get their take on this situation, where they're using town property to swamp out a dumpster that's full of rainwater. And I'm being kind. And like I said, this may involve more than just the Board of Health to have the authority to get this to stop right now. So what I'm trying to come up with at this hour is a form of action we can take, first thing tomorrow morning. We can give instructions to our administrative assistant to move forward in this direction first thing tomorrow morning. So Tom, again, what are your initial thoughts on maybe what we can accomplish tomorrow on putting the brakes on this operation?
Well, I believe, as described and what's been provided as evidence, that we have what sounds to me like an imminent public health issue. And
Yes.
based on that fact, I believe as a Board of Health, we can issue a cease and desist based on what we have authority to do in supporting public health.
Sounds good to me.
Irrespective of the building department, irrespective of conservation, the Board of Health has a tremendous amount of authority in this type of area. That is my belief.
And it was the manager of BP confirmed with me that prior to that June 16th, 2022 dumping, the previous dumping, and that was the 30-foot dumpster, that was before he swapped out and made it a little smaller, and it's just a little smaller. It was January. That is 6 months. This is a public health issue. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the timeline and the video and the photograph that you've supplied us with. And that is definitely, evidence, in my opinion, to at least take step one.
Thank you.
And then, again, we need to get together with some, in my opinion, in the absence of the chairman, we need to, reach out to other boards like the building department, conservation, and see what we can do at this point where we don't have any dumpster regulations approved and in place at this time. We have them drafted and we've been working on them. But again, my concern is giving instructions to Jack on actions that he can take tomorrow.
Thank you.
So, no, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you
And
very much.
again, I apologize that even though I've been told twice that this was going to be resolved, that it hasn't been. But we'll get it. We have no choice but to get it resolved.
Question for you, Tisha. In any of the information you provided, photographic, video, what have you, does it also include, out of curiosity, the work happening on town land?
The video that I sent was the dumpster being swapped out, and that was town land. You can see the town building in the video.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can confirm that, Tom. I saw the video.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I
So-
just wanted to just validate we had something
Yeah,
photographed,
so
at least for
Tom,
that point.
Tom, in your opinion, I don't know if we need to take a vote on this, what we need to do, but I think we need to give Jack clear instructions on, what we want to see done tomorrow.
Well, my position is to issue the cease and desist order and then make him come and appeal why it shouldn't be in place. Again, the Board of Health has a tremendous amount of authority when it comes to the protection of public health and public welfare. I would say put the onus on him in showing us why the cease and desist would not apply, but he'd have to come to us after it was implemented and placed upon him. Of course, that would involve, the police, and I'd probably want to confirm what else would have to come into play to make that an official order, how the presentation of that has to be. I think it's just a matter of us, or representative of the Board of Health, along with the representative of the police department, simply presenting a formal cease and desist as it's outlined, and giving him instruction as to how he can come before us to explain his position. But in the meantime, he needs to cease and desist. That would be my
So
view.
so that would take a little bit of time to put that in
Well,
play, right?
If it's just a matter of drafting a document
Yeah.
that basically outlines and basically states that this is your cease and desist order and what the criteria is surrounding the cease and desist, and then what he has to do as a property owner, what his options are in coming before the board to explain his situation. But in the
Yeah.
interim, he'd have to follow, my view is, he'd have to follow the cease and desist, because as I see it, we have what's being described to me as an imminent public health hazard here. And that overweighs, in my view, any private issue that he might have as a homeowner. He's now affecting
no,
public health.
I agree with that. I guess my question is, how long do you think it would take us to put that in play?
So, question is, who can we get validation from to, that just simply be a document that we type up, we create.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a document that we're presenting, like I said, with escort with a police officer to validate the delivery of the cease and desist as a witness. I think that maybe a conversation or a call to DPH may be the way to go to get validation from the state perspective.
Okay.
So we can kind of confer from a local level, you know, our requirement for what we need to follow to make sure it's implemented correctly.
Okay.
You know, so again, a phone call, but I don't know who that would be at DPH. I mean, we have a couple of contacts, and I'm sure that we could probably engage Missy, to be honest with you, to get a good direction.
No, you're right.
She's still got the network in place, and she knows the players very well.
No, I agree with that. So, but still, that's going to take a little bit of time.
Well,
what about,
it could take some hours, you know.
Yeah, but what do you think about having Jack first thing tomorrow morning contact BP Trucking via phone, telling them not to use town property and why, and following that up with whoever he talks to, following that up with an email saying the same thing. So
Yeah.
we have the email and we have the phone call. That can be done immediately tomorrow morning.
Yeah, if we can make, if the connection of the public, what I'm viewing as a public health hazard is in conjunction with what's happening on town land, then yes, to me, that's the link that would say, okay, we can make that instruction.
Well,
And then
I mean,
follow
the
it
video,
up with the formal-
the video clearly shows debris falling out of the dumpster onto town property.
Yep.
It clearly shows household garbage in like kitchen bags on top of the dumpster. Now, I can't say those fell out. In the video that I saw, they stayed in the dumpster. But if the dumpster's getting swapped out at 6 months and 6 days, that's how that trash, household trash, has been sitting there, in my opinion, well beyond a reasonable amount of time.
Also,
in an open dumpster.
No question. No question.
also, if I could have gotten out there fast enough to see when he dropped the dumpster originally, you saw them loading the full dumpster, but if you had seen it being dropped, that's when all the juice spills out.
Right,
It's when-
and common sense would tell anybody that an open dumpster sitting for 6 months and 6 days
Yeah.
has definitely seen the weather.
That's right.
Okay. Now, I agree with you. Unfortunately, the video does not show the dumpster juice coming out, but any reasonable person could see that,
Right.
even though they didn't see it come out, because we know what happens from January 10th to June 16th when you have an open dumpster. I mean, even if you had a cover on the dumpster, that, like some dumpsters have the 2-piece plastic covers, we know that those covers aren't weather tight.
Right.
Okay, so there's juice in those dumpsters, even though they have, you know, a lid on them, so to speak. It's not a weather tight lid. That's a long time for you know, any kind of debris to be sitting outside. So again, my instruction to Jack at this point would be to please contact BP Trucking in the morning and then send an email stating the same thing, that the dumpster is not to be changed out on town-owned property, abutting conservation land. And then I don't know if you can get a receipt that the email was received and read. I'm not technology savvy, as step one. And I think the line that Tom is going down is definitely step two, but will take a little longer than first thing in the morning to get into play. I definitely like, reaching out to Missy as a resource, for a possible contact to get hold of at DPH before step two is taken, to make sure that we follow the correct steps. So, I'm on board for that if Tom's on board.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board. I think this is another situation where we need to act and act swiftly. So I'm in line with those steps. The other thought I just had, while you were kind of talking about the situation, is with him bringing in debris, if I'm hearing that correctly, Tish, debris is being brought in from other sites and being put into that dumpster. Is that correct?
Tish, you're on mute if you're talking.
I apologize. Throughout the years, I've witnessed that countless times. I see cars pulling in. Other people in my household have witnessed it as well. Cars pulling in and emptying out, their truck or their car with debris and trash. Whether or not he's charging them, I have no idea.
So the reason I asked that pointedly is this may actually also come into line with being an unauthorized transfer station, Alan.
Yes, and I actually expressed that to him when I talked to him the first time this situation reared its ugly head. And I was, again, hoping as a neighbor and a Board of Health member that knows him, or, a little bit, we're acquaintances, we wave to each other when we go down the street. I tried to tell him that was a possible situation that he could find himself in. And I didn't want that to happen.
Yeah, because that element, if that were to get introduced into the process, that's going to be that would involve the state.
Yeah,
and he doesn't want to deal with that.
I can tell you this.
No,
I was married to a contractor in the past, and I know for a fact that he had given him cash to get rid of some of his stuff from jobs. Now, whether or not I can prove that, I might be able to prove that with old QuickBooks or old checkbook things, but it was nothing ever I approved of because I didn't want part of it. But that's, I know for a fact that's occurred.
Yeah.
Well, like I said,
he definitely doesn't want to. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, my conversation with the homeowner was that he told me he was going to start putting dumpsters on site of his various projects. So that was almost telling me that was what was happening in the past, and it wasn't going to happen anymore. But regardless, like I said, I think my interest is getting step one accomplished first thing tomorrow morning in a reasonable amount of time by both phone call and email, and some sort of a receipt that the email was read, if that's a possibility, or received, if that's a possibility. And then, moving to step two, Tom, to try to get that into play, because tomorrow's Thursday already. So we got a holiday weekend. I really don't want it to get lost or drag on any longer. And at this point, I think I'm willing to get my hand slapped if for some reason I'm overstepping my authority.
Yeah, I think it's always better to beg forgiveness than ask permission, right, Alan?
Well, you know, I'm a rule follower. I believe rules prevent chaos. But again, I was told twice, and I really wanted to keep this amicable. But I was told twice that, you know, this was going to be resolved, and you know, we're still talking about it at almost 10 o'clock at night. So action of some kind needs to be taken immediately. And if a correction needs to be made somewhere along the line between step one and however many steps this takes, I'm willing to take correction at this point. But at least I'll know that, you know, my heart was in the right place.
No, understood. Yeah, unfortunately, you know, just in general, kind of, this has been an evening that sort of a little bit infuriates me a little bit. It's just kind of unfortunate. You just can't have people that have a common respect for their, you know, neighbors and whatnot, and you have to go to these lengths. But this is why groups exist, and sometimes you have to take action you don't want to take. But nonetheless, I believe we have a duty and a responsibility to the residents in the town to act accordingly, not to, you know, come in heavy-handed, so to speak. But this seems to be clearly a situation that he's been given opportunity, and it's time to act.
Well, and actually, I'm reading a little more detail here. I just saw Ann Mazar's name, and she's very involved, obviously, in the protection of town-owned land. So, I mean, we could even reach out to her tomorrow, you know, and let her know, because obviously this video has been forwarded to her, and it's been forwarded to the selectman's office. So people are aware, other than the Board of Health, about the, you know, what's going on here. And again, I'm willing to be corrected if I overstep, but right now, action is the only direction.
Since you actually brought it up with regard to other groups in town that seems like they've been made aware of the situation with the action that we're going to be taking, with the notification, the email follow-up, do we want to consider copying particular groups so they're in the loop?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, Mike Maroli at the Selectman's office has been notified. Ann Mazar has been notified, so she's with the Mendon Land Use Committee, and 3 or 4 other committees. So yes, I think definitely CCing, you know, other. I don't even see why we don't CC the building department. You know, they should, you know what action we're taking and why. So absolutely, anybody that, you know, we think is appropriate, by all means.
Okay.
Jack, did you get all that?
I did get all that.
I'm glad you have broad shoulders.
He's also
that's the
6'4".
plan. So that's the plan. First thing tomorrow morning, where it fits into your morning routine, is to reach out to see if you can get, by any chance, get hold of this Steve at BP Trucking, and Tish, if you're still on the line, if you have any information on the phone number or email or whatever it was you may have used to contact this gentleman, Steve, please pass that on to the Board of Health.
Yeah, I just looked because I know I did save his number in my phone that day, but it looks like I deleted it. But I just called BP and asked to speak to a manager. Now, last year it was Tanya that I spoke to, and she's the one that confirmed that that was Rick's instructions to them. She sounded as if she knew him personally, and she confirmed that those were his personal instructions. But the number there is 508-231-1000.
All right, Jack, I'm hoping you got that. So, again, first thing tomorrow morning where it fits in your schedule, please contact BP Trucking and inform them of the situation on Inman Hill Road in the town of Mendon, and that the dumpster is no longer to be swapped out using town-owned property abutting conservation land, period.
My
and
conversation with, oh, sorry.
That's okay. Also follow that up with an email to whoever the manager is that you talk to, Steve, Tanya, or whoever you have a conversation with, and CC the Selectman's Office, Mendon Land Use Committee, Building Department, Conservation Department, and anybody else, zoning, planning, anybody else that you feel may want to put their eyes on what we're doing.
Okay.
I mean, whatever you feel is appropriate above and beyond what I mentioned. And that will be step one at trying to resolve this. And then, Tom, I unfortunately, tomorrow is a very busy day for me, but I'm more than willing to reach out to you when I get off the road tomorrow if necessary. I have no doubt we're going to have to follow step 2. So, unless you want Jack to reach out to Missy during the day tomorrow and see if we can get, a good contact based on her network, and we'll move forward on, finding out how we issue a cease and desist as soon as possible.
I'd be happy to reach out to Missy. With the holiday coming, she may be off, but of course I have a way to reach her. But I'd be happy to tackle that piece and
All right.
get a confirmation of a contact for validation of what we're talking about. So we're following the protocol correctly.
Okay.
For a cease and desist. And yep, I can feed that back to Jack.
Okay. And why don't I check in with you tomorrow when I get off the road?
Sure. So one other question, a logistical question for Tisha. Tisha, is there any other piece of land up there that could be deemed or be considered not town land, but potentially a conservation land that this type of activity could occur on? And I'm asking that so that maybe in our description to BP that we're saying none of this activity of loading, unloading should happen on anything other than the owner's property, period.
That's basically how I worded it to Steve. And then he told me and assured me that he put that in the notes for all the drivers moving forward. But I was told that before by Tanya last year. And then they did adhere to that for like 1, maybe 2 dumpings, and then they went back to doing it on the street.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
this
Tom,
time it's going to be,
absolutely.
this time it's going to be an authoritative board that's going to be not making the request. We're going to be making the demand.
Much appreciated.
Because they could find themselves culpable.
Much appreciated, because also I think I included that in my email that I picked up like 4 construction nails, 2 after they left, and so that doesn't even count the times that I didn't make it out there to, scan the land, you know what I mean? So.
Sure, yeah. Okay. We have a plan.
Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right, so Jack,
Yes, sir.
his assignment, you, Tom, are going to reach out to Missy and try to find the best way into the appropriate person. And I am going to check with you tomorrow when I get off the road and see where we're at. Jack, are you working Friday?
I am working Friday, yes.
Okay. So, very possible that we could get started on step 2 on Friday.
Yep.
Very good.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome, Tisha. Thank you for participating.
All right, gentlemen, we're at 3 hours. Where do we go from here?
Well, there's really nothing that really needs to be